All right. So glad to be here again, starting this disability justice and recognizing wholeness. So I'd like to offer an identity statement, and if others choose to share later, also inviting your identity statement at that time as well. Um, but most people here know me. My name is Laura, and I identify as a person who is racialized and sexualized by the culture I live in, and as well as being sort of parsed into many other sort of identities like disabled or femme. And so I reject that deconstruction, and I use the pronouns he and kin to represent my belonging in the entire family of everything that lives on this planet. Um, it's important to me always to give thanks and acknowledgement to the many wise beings that make the sharing that I am going to offer possible. Um, while my thinking around their work may be original, much of what I share actually, and much of what everyone in the wisdom circle shares, comes from deep traditions and long lineages of wisdom. And it's important to call them in, to acknowledge that, and to have both the gratitude and the humility to accept and honor that support. So I offer always gratitude to Sins Invalid for cultivating the principles of disability justice that are the focus of this series. And for today's offering, I offer gratitude to many indigenous cultures that I am referring to and drawing wisdom from in order to share today. And throughout the course of this offering, I will call in the wisdom of many other wise beings, and I say their names with gratitude and deep bows. So with that, I would like to go into a time of meditation. It's important that we prepare ourselves to enter into that space. So perhaps just beginning by recognizing that we are calling ourselves into a space of connection, integration, and receiving of the support that is right for us in this moment, in our bodies, in our minds, in our hearts. Listening to whatever is inside of you, listening for the possibility that something might be required. Perhaps right now you are feeling called to set an intention. And if that's the case, please honor your own intentions and your own needs. You may feel called to take a particular posture or position. Whatever is right for you and your body as we begin to enter into this space, know that you are invited and supported in doing so. And as we begin to open this space, like spreading a blanket that both comforts and provides space, connecting all of us who are present giving some awareness to how that appears for you, whatever the qualities of that blanket might be, how warm it might be, what it might be made of, the colors, the texture, the temperature, the energy. That we are creating in the connection of the blanket that supports and connects all of us. And into that supportive space, letting your mind become aware of any particular support that you might like to call in to be with you, to be with all of us as we enter into practice. In Buddhism, there is a tradition of calling in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha. And in Lama Rad's 7 Homecomings tradition, he expands that to include the ancestors and our lineages, the Great Mother Earth, the space that exists to hold and support us, and our own beings, our entire beings, all of our incarnations as we have walked through this life, and if it fits your construction, as we may have walked through lives in the past, as we may journey into lives in the future. So calling in whatever might support you, just with a gentle invitation to come and support you here and to be with us in our common space that we are weaving together. Drawing a breath, letting the breath flow from your body, beginning to notice the quality of your inhale and your exhale, noticing the depth, the breadth, the temperature, and affirming that this breath is part of the blanket that has held, supported, and carried you throughout your entire journey on this planet so far. Noticing the places that the breath touches in your body. And perhaps even inviting yourself to notice that there may be some place where you feel the breath most strongly. It might be at your nostrils, in your throat, in your chest, Just letting your gentle awareness rest with that place right now. If it feels right to you to allow your awareness to continue to rest there, letting that be what goes forward for you. Perhaps also, if it's right, allowing your awareness to expand to other places the breath touches in your body. And particularly if you are able, you might even place a hand. Perhaps you feel the breath in your chest. Perhaps you feel the breath in your abdomen. And letting yourself have contact with the inhalation, the inspiration, the breathing in of the spirit of life, in those places of body, and the gentle exhale, the dancing back, the releasing of spirit from your body back into the environment. And allowing yourself just to rest in the comfortable awareness of what this dance is like for you right now. And as we dance with the breath in this way, allowing ourselves to become aware of the whole body as an instrument in this dance. even the places where we don't necessarily feel an expansion with the inspiration or a release or a collapse or a relaxation with the exhalation, knowing that the breath touches everywhere, every cell connected to each other, receiving the vibrations and the nourishment of this dance. And as you become aware of the whole instrument of your body, particularly allowing yourself right now to become aware of any places in your body that might feel tight, or challenged, or painful. And with each inhalation, allowing the breath to soothe and relax those places, even if only a tiny change, a tiny release is possible. Receiving and having gratitude for that gift from the breath. And as we continue in this dance of relationship with the spirit, the inhalation, the inspiration, noticing also if there are places in your body that might be calling for something that is known to you, something that you can hear. I need a little bit more energy here. I need a little bit more space here. I need a little bit more strength here. So listening to those calls in the body, and with your inhalation, with your inspiration, inviting the breath to bring the message that is being requested. to those places in your body. More energy, more strength, more life, more ease. Whatever is being requested, allowing that to go forward, even if only a small, tiny change is possible. And opening yourself also to listen to those places in your body that might be calling for something that is unknown to you. Being aware something is needed, something is wanted. Perhaps the unknown is all right. Perhaps we don't need to know, but simply to acknowledge there's something needed here. There's something wanted in those places. And inviting the breath, the inhalation and the exhalation, the inspiration and the dance of life back into the environment to bring what it knows to bring to those places in your body. And if it's right for you, inviting a sense of your body whole, in complete dancing with the breath, including places of tension, places of ease, places of need or want, places that are calm, peaceful, contented, bringing the sense of the wholeness of all of that in the dance with the breath, resting in the care of this blanket that we have created to support and connect ourselves together, resting in the support of the guides, the teachers, the spirits that you may have called to accompany you here. And allowing yourself to sit or lay, rest, be held in silence with all of that. Slowly allowing your awareness to expand to include not just your body, not just the dance with spirit and the blanket, the connection with all of us here, but also your surroundings, any noises you may hear, perhaps feeling more deeply the support of whatever you're resting upon. Perhaps beginning to allow a little gentle movement to come into your body. And as we bring this period of practice to a close, having gratitude for every being, spirit, teacher that has joined you and all of us in this practice, and allowing those visitors to return to whatever place they need to be right now. Sending your thanks and appreciation with them. Maybe rolling your shoulders, letting even larger movements start to come. Maybe stretching in any way that's available to you. Twisting, bending, whatever your body is asking for right now. And returning back to our common space. So thank you everyone for being in this meditation practice, this embodied awareness practice with me. And we will have our comfort break now. It'll be a little bit over 8 minutes. I'm going to stop the recording for copyright reasons, and I'm going to share with you in just a moment some a YouTube of Chantress Seba. So go ahead, and whatever it is you need to do, you can start doing it. I'm going to stop the recording and get this started. So, welcoming everyone back. Hoping that your needs were met during that break. And let's start sharing. So, excuse me. Those of us who have been here before, you know I like words. So I'm going to start with words today. So the principle today is recognizing wholeness. And I am going to place in the chat the principle as it is articulated by Sins Invalid, which is that people have inherent worth outside of commodity relations and capitalist notions of productivity. Each person is full of history and experience. So when I look at those words, first looking at recognize, it's made up of 2 parts. It's got a prefix, re, which means again. And then the second part of the word comes from the Latin word cognosco, which means to know, to get to know, to become acquainted with, to learn, inquire, or examine with. So when we recognize something, we again become acquainted with it. It's not a static word. It's an active word of bringing into process what we recognize, what we can perceive and process. And when I look at, again, excuse me, the word wholeness, that's from the Middle English. I guess I'm going to take a drink. Hold on. Hopefully that'll help. So wholeness is the first part of it, W-H-O-L-E, whole, comes from the Middle English meaning entire, unhurt, uninjured, safe, healthy, healed, sound, genuine. And the suffix ness, N-E-S-S, is also somewhat of a dynamic, has a dynamic quality because it refers to the beingness, the state of being, the action, the quality of being whole. So when I put all that together, I could say that recognizing wholeness means to get to know our inherent condition of being entire and unbroken, or to be in relationship with the quality of our own healthy, sound genuineness. So I'm going to place that in the chat as well. And all of this will be, excuse me, in the blog that I share with you. So there's no need for you to scramble around to take note of anything that you feel you'd like to remember. So as we go into this exploration of getting to know our inherent condition of being entire and unbroken, and doing that by being in relationship with the quality of our own healthy, sound genuineness, we're going to examine some more words. We're going to look at some of the Buddha Dharma. So I'm going to share with you the chat, the chart of the Eightfold Noble Path that I shared with you last week as we talk about Dharma. So can you all, is that big enough for you all to see? So remember that last month we talked about how the Noble Eightfold Path is broken down into sort of three groupings by Ananda Medinya. And I would like to suggest that, if that with what I've just said about recognizing wholeness, that the principle that we might want to focus with in the Noble Eightfold Path is right remembering, or samasati, which is part of the what's commonly called a concentration grouping, and as we discussed last month, meaning the essential distillation, the extract of other types of practice. So again, focusing on the words, sama means right, correct, proper, complete, and perfect. And sati means memory, retention, to remember, to observe. It means wakefulness of mind, lucidity of mind, self-possession, self-consciousness. So I want to refer again to Sebene Selassie, because she has pointed out to us that as moderns, we always put mind right at the beginning, like mindfulness. But scholars tell us there are many meanings of sati and connotations of sati that are much more embodied and active. So remembering, putting putting together, or connecting the ancient wisdoms that are actually already present in our body, but perhaps are buried by our modernness. So one thing that Sebene Selassie says, and I'm going to put this in the chat as well, is that mindfulness purports to encompass all experiences and lead to liberation. But in reality, because in our Western and Westernized practice of this concept, we are privileging the mind, when actually the concept indigenously was mind, heart. So she refers to the word chitta. This is because chitta is referred to in many Pali texts of the time of Buddha as being what we are working with to still and bring into clarity and ease. So the mind heart, the center and focus of human elemental nature. So with all of that in mind, we know that I like to propose definitions. I am proposing a definition of samasati, or right remembering, as vigorously and persistently cultivating and nurturing a dedicated practice of knowing, re-knowing, and reconstructing the wisdom and moral discipline to be with ourselves, others, and the world in a way that is both authentic to us and supports and is in harmony with the true nature of reality. So again, the concentration elements, or the distillation elements, require this vigorous and persistent practice. So it doesn't mean that we're going to spend all day, every day in practice, and that we're going to wear ourselves out doing nothing but trying to be mindful, as again the common parlance in the West is. but that we will vigorously return to that. We will persistently return to that awareness because we're in fluctuation, and as humans, we move away. We're called away by the demands of life. But we will return, and we will have that intention without blaming or shaming ourselves for having moved away. We will return. So all of this, for me, as I was looking through all of this, it brought to mind this concept of Ubuntu, which is a West African word, I think Bantu, that is sometimes translated as I am because we are. And as I was looking a little bit more into that term, it's said to embody a philosophy that emphasizes communalism, shared values, and interconnectedness within African societies. It's reflecting an idea that an individual's identity is inherently tied to their community and relations. So thinking about that and taking that in the context of remembering ourselves and understanding and being in relationship with ourselves as healthy, sound, and genuine, and just taking in that within this term, that is very centered within the context of community and interrelationship. And just to expand on that a little bit, Sebene Selassie in her book You Belong talks about having an interaction with a man who was a guide at the education program at Freedom Park in Pretoria, South Africa. And what he said about Ubuntu, when he was discussing this word with her, he said, Ubuntu means that I recognize all people as me. Oh, and remember, all things are people. Animals are people, trees are people, the sky is people, mountains are people, water is people, rocks are people. So in this concept of community, it wasn't just about humans. It was this community of everything. The animals, the trees, the sky, the mountains, the water, the rocks. And as I was tooling along in my car one day listening to NPR, I heard a story about a new Filipino bakery that was opening in Chicago called Kapwa. And they said, oh, this is a really important word in the Filipino culture because Kapwa really is a recognition of shared identity, an inner self shared with others. And it implies inclusiveness and the moral obligation to treat one another as equal fellow beings. So as I heard that, I thought, that's so similar that's so reminding me of Ubuntu. And this is coming this is coming from Southeast Asia. It's a Filipino concept. So I wonder where else does this concept of wholeness that is way beyond what we use here in the West, where else does this concept of wholeness exist? So I started looking around, and it exists in many places. In North America, there is, and it exists in many indigenous places. The Cherokee people in North America had a word, ailuhe, which basically means harmony, wholeness, abundance, and peace rooted in a connected worldview. And the Lakota people have a word, a phrase, mataku uyasin, which basically is a way of describing reality by actually speaking to it, by addressing it and calling it all my relations. So standing in relation to all of reality as all my relations, including all humans, all animals, all plants, the waters, the soil, the stones, the mountains, the grasslands, the winds, the clouds, the storms, sun, moon, stars, planets, all our relations. There's a Navajo word, Hosho, which literally can be translated as I am you, you are me. And there is an Alaskan concept of shared personhood in the word Yupik. So all over in indigenous North American culture, in South America, there's a Mayan proverb in Lakich, which means you are another me. And according to, and I'll share the links for everything that I've found, but according to a professor that I found, Fidencio Briceño, expresses the concept of unity of Mayan thought. And it could actually be translated as I don't exist without you, and you don't exist without me. Therefore, you and I exist from relating, we exist from us. In Eurasia, meaning Europe and Asia put together because they're basically one landmass. In Korea, there's a word wori that basically sort of represents this substitution of we for I. It represents a sense of community, unity, and oneness in such a way that if I am holding a baby in my arms, it'll be addressed by another person as our baby. If I am cooking a meal, it will be addressed by another person as our meal. If I ask for an ingredient, if I need cabbage, I will say, where is our cabbage? So it replaces what we in the West, how we prevalently use I with a we concept. And also in Eurasia, in the Middle East, a word that we've probably all heard in Hebrew, shalom, has to do with being in right relationship, being in harmony, and taking the actions that allow us to create an inward sense of completeness or wholeness. And while I couldn't find any particular single word, there are similar concepts in Confucianism and Taoism in China. In Australia and Oceania, in in Samoan, there is a term fa'asinomaga that basically means one is incomplete without the foundation of two things: lineage slash descent slash heritage, and the foundational the the three foundational elements that strengthens one identity are those things. So essentially, it means to know one's identity is to know one's culture, again, one's community, what we are creating together. In New Zealand, the indigenous Polynesian inhabitants had a word, or have a word, wakapapa, which represents a framework that links all animate, inanimate, known and unknown phenomena in the terrestrial and spiritual worlds. So it's this linkage between everything. And again, Ubuntu comes from Africa, and there are other terms in Africa. In the Fula language, Nedoku, Nedoku Badum means that a person is their relatives, so their connections, their community. And in Arabic, there is a word Wiyam, which means harmony, concord, reconciliation, unity. So I go through all these words because what's important to me is not to latch onto, for instance, Ubuntu and say, those Bantu people, they had it all together. The point is to say, look, the indigenous people everywhere had a completely different concept of wholeness, a completely different concept of wholeness. Not this sort of medicalized wholeness that we have in the US. And I'll mention, for instance, Audre Lorde, who some of us may be familiar with. Audre Lorde I want to say 1979-80, had breast cancer, and she had a mastectomy. So if you lose a breast as a woman in the West, that's a big blow to your wholeness. And she was confronted with this constantly by the demand that she wear a prosthesis, something to replace her breast. And not only was she confronted with this, it was told to her insistently that she would never know the difference between having two breasts and having one breast and a prosthesis. And even when she went to her doctor's office for her first checkup after the surgery, and she wasn't wearing a prosthesis, she was scolded and told, oh, we really need you to at least wear something when you come in here, because if you don't, it's bad for morale. But of course, legend has it that the women, the Amazonian women, routinely amputated one breast for archery purposes so that it wouldn't get in the way. Whichever that dominant hand was, they routinely amputated a breast so that they could perform a skill better. So I guess I'd like to pause at this moment and invite any sort of reflections that folks might have about any of the indigenous words that I shared, and just reminding you that if you prefer, um, you can type something in the chat. If you'd like to share something with your voice and you don't want it recorded, you can ask me to pause the recording, or if you would like to just share, just unmute and speak, whatever works for you. Just going to read what Astrid wrote in the chat when Reverend Desmond Tutu, who was a South African bishop and theologian, was asked, "How are you?" He always answered, "We are well. We are well." Well, feel free to offer your observations at any time. But when I look across all these words, I see a commonality of that everything is sacred. Whereas, as compared to my experience of Western culture that I live in here in the US, sacred is apparently a thing that is very specific and exists in certain bodies or locations or objects. It's very different. There's also, I think, an undertone that connection is survival, that this is how we live. Not survival in the sense of a knife to your throat, but this is the way of life. That connection is identity, and that the individual is defined as the group, and the group is defined as the individual, which I'm never going to take sort of a romanticized position about indigenous cultures any more than I am about this culture that I'm in, because I'm sure there are many harsh consequences and for difference in any sort of culture. But that doesn't mean we can't evolve and understand, grow in understanding based on what we can now perceive as equity, that perhaps wasn't a concept at those times, while using and honoring this tradition of sacred connection and commonality. So, in recognizing wholeness in these indigenous words, I almost feel as though wholeness and belonging are the same word, because we are, if I am you and you are me, that's the definition of belonging. Our wholeness is our belonging. And again, just men- looking for a moment at disability and wholeness. Most of us have our cameras off, but we had them on at one point, and we're not alike. We're not the same person. We're all different. We're in different shapes, different sizes, uh, different parts of the country or the world. So the difference of disability is really just another difference. It's not a marginalization. I am still you, whatever my abilities are, and you are still me, whatever your abilities are. So let's go a little deeper into my sharing on. Oh, go ahead, Astrid. Go ahead.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, I don't mind my voice being on record. Yeah, I just wanted to, yeah, I'm one for rabbit holes. Been rabbit holing like basically the whole time. And thank you for sharing this because I had this, just this idea that like if this was like taught in schools from like, in the West especially from like very young age, like we'd have just a different world. Like, like there'd just be a different way of like raising our children. If this was the dominant
Astrid, don't
character.
they have degrees in comparative religion? Why don't they have degrees in comparative philosophy? Like this is
Yeah,
all the same, right?
right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's and it just makes total sense to me that all these different indigenous cultures would have, words for a similar concept of being just connected to everything. Um, and yeah, with my own lineage, partly in Sierra Leone, I was thinking, when you said like West Africa and that Ubuntu is from West Africa, I was like, oh no, we must attribute it to the right, the right part of Africa. I was like, no, because it comes from all over Africa. Like Bantu languages are all over Africa, and even in
Thank you.
yeah, even like
Thank you.
South, because we only hear about, mainly coming from South, but actually all over the place, like East, West, all over the place. People have their own words and their own, for like whatever you want to call it in English, like interconnectedness or humanity, their own words for it. So yeah, and even in my own lineage, from Sierra Leone, which really is from somewhere else, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole. There's a word for it, and I was like, that I didn't know until I just kind of looked it up. So, yeah, thank
Oh,
you
what
for
did
this
you just
topic.
looked it up? What is it?
Yeah, it's Maya, which is like Maaya. And I
Cool.
need to figure out what language that's in because yeah, that country's been so colonized and extracted from. It's like yeah, even the people there kind of well, at least my family who actually comes from there, who emigrated to the West, to the West, all over the West. Um, I would say many of us in the diaspora don't have that knowledge because our languages were stripped. And so, um, yeah, that's kind of a whole nother story. But
Yeah,
um,
and it really illuminates, doesn't it? The reason why language is attacked and the education
mm,
of children is attacked by colonizers.
yeah, I mean,
It really illuminates.
yeah, I mean, whether that's like 200 years ago or 300 years ago or now, it's like still happening in different forms. And so, yeah, um, very
Yeah.
vigorously as you can see at the moment. So, yeah, so it's, um, yeah, I just think as someone who just really like educating children about their heritage is really important to me. I just kind of wanted to express that and just just thinking about my part in that for my own community. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much, Astrid. And, one of the reasons that I always share in the blog, like all the links of like where I found stuff is partly because of what you alluded to, is it's so, especially for like a, I don't know, not really a scholar, an inquirer, but not a scholar like me, to really know what's true about all this, like what's deeply true about all this, is pretty tenuous. So I share because I want to give people the opportunity to have their own inquiry, and help us all to refine and understand more deeply. While at the same time, I really believe we need to take everything that we find that supports us and what we believe is the true nature of reality, the way that it should go forward. And we need to put it in what fits our lives today and what serves us today. We can't, it doesn't mean we have to change the clothes that we wear or the rituals that we do. Maybe our clothing and our rituals will be influenced, but, we need to, um, Buddha said, find out for yourself. We need to ingest it, find out for ourselves, and then express it in our own way, in the way that serves us.
Mm. Yeah, I just there was this one more thing about wholeness and how it's like it just kind of hit me that it's so there's such an individual, related to the individual, like in kind of Western, kind of the kind of Western healing industrial complex. It's not wholeness isn't related to all my relations idea. It's like really an individual. Like, can we be whole in ourselves as individuals? And actually, that's, I feel like, oh, wow, I've really been duped. Like, I just had this like realization of, wow, the whole, which is the individuality, which is like connected to capitalism and patriarchy and all that,
Yeah,
is really done a number like on all of us, even like in the healing spaces.
yeah,
So,
absolutely,
people that
absolutely.
like me from the diaspora have
Yeah,
really drunk the Kool-Aid. So I hold my hand up and yeah, just kind of, I think it's about, for me, it's about peeling the layers because there's always of the onion. Um, and
yeah,
being from a place, my other half of the family, ironically being from Bermuda, where onions were like main export like 300 years ago. Yeah, it feels a very colonized place. Bermuda. I feel like, yeah, there's always something to be unlearning. So thank you.
yeah. Thank you. So I want to spend a couple of minutes just with a couple of observations and what I'm going to call modern relational wholeness and belonging concepts. Um, there's a quote from Sebene Selassie another quote from her that I think really um, is a good entree into this type of discussion. She says, our wounds around belonging happen relationally. They'll heal that way too. So, in an indigenous culture where I am you and you are me, how I wonder, how did our wounds happen? Did our wounds happen relationally in that culture? So, a book that I read this month, um, by Maladoma Patrice Somé on ritual talks talks a little bit about this clash of these cultures. One thing that he says the greatest shock that American culture has on traditional people is the notion of speed. I believe that the difference between the indigenous world and the industrial world has mostly to do with speed, not about whether one world needs to have ritual and the other doesn't, it appears that the indigenous world looks while the industrial world overlooks. Indigenous people are indigenous because there are no machines barring the door to the spirit world where one can enter in and listen to what is going on within at a deep level, participating in the vibration of nature. Thus, the two worlds, the traditional and the industrial, are diametrically opposed. The indigenous world, in trying to emulate nature, espouses a walk with life, a slow, quiet, day-to-day kind of existence. The modern world, on the other hand, steams through life like a locomotive, controlled by a certain sense of careless waste and destruction. So I feel that the effect of this, not the wisdom of this, the effect of this shows up in some of the more contemporary thinkers talking about wholeness and belonging. So, for instance, Brene Brown, who some of you may have heard of, who she's a current person who studies shame and vulnerability. She says, belonging is being part of something bigger than yourself, but it's also the courage to stand alone and to belong to yourself above all else. I belong to myself. And Maya Angelou in the 1970s said the same thing in a conversation with Bill Moyers. She said, I belong to myself. I believe that these kinds of observations, the saying that I want to belong to this group, there is this idea that there's something bigger that feels like wholeness and belonging to me. But above all else, I've got to belong to myself. These become necessary. It becomes necessary to have that type of belonging to myself in a culture that disbelieves in interconnectedness. When we don't have the underlying philosophy, nowhere in our language, nowhere in our, it's not taught in school. We don't have that underlying philosophy. It's kind of like shooting darts without knowing where the dartboard is. So the Brene Brown quote that I just read came from a podcast, and just moments earlier in that same podcast, in my analysis, she showed that she had consumed this modern machine ideal of community and belonging. She said, I don't know that I've interviewed anyone, even spiritual leaders, who have the belonging thing completely nailed, because I don't think we know what it is. Okay, I agree, Brene, with that part. I don't think that it's having a big posse of friends or having a crew or rolling with a bunch of people. I still feel lonely and alone on a really regular basis. So here's literally she's writing books right now, contemporary scholar on shame and vulnerability, who throws up rolling with a bunch of people or your posse as an example potentially of belonging. So to me, what this means is, like, in the modern world, being with people who also feel unrooted, when we are with them, that means we get to enjoy feeling unrooted together for a while. We are together being unrooted. It's not the same as belonging. It's unsatisfying. And that's why people feel lonely and alone. So Maya Angelou also said, you are only free when you realize you belong no place, you belong every place, no place at all. The price is high, the reward is great. This is exactly the opposite. And by the way, I love Maya Angelou. I love Maya Angelou, but I really think she's not talking about wholeness here. She's talking about survival in a culture of disconnection. I love Maya Angelou. And so, yes, I am free when I realize I belong no place because I belong every place, no place at all. The price is high in this culture, in this culture. So I want to bring attention to all of this, and again in the context of disability. Um, and I wasn't able to find a reference to disability in Patrice Somé, but I did find discussions of illness. So in that context, which is very close, I want to share this quote. The presence of, and this is in caps, the other world, capital O, other world, is never trivial. The general impression is that ritual should proceed, it should precede human involvement with the world and with each other. When a person is suddenly sick, while he lies in pain, the head of the house first goes to the diviner and finds out what went wrong. There, he finds out what ritual must be done. He comes back home, finds the elements that are needed to enter into the ritual, and performs it. Only after all of this is done does it finally become necessary to do something directly to the sick person. By that time, the illness has been dealt with symbolically. What remains is the actualization of what has already been performed in ritual. So the concept, you know, this there were medicines. It's not that there weren't medicines. It's not that there weren't interventions that were done for sick people. But the concept that I think has been villainized by the West is that in order to make the person whole, we needed the entire ritual that reunites what has become maybe disrupted from this community relation. Like the health in my body leaving me puts me distant from community. I'm not participating. Disabled people know this. Disabled people know that when we cannot perform in the ways that society expects us to, it puts us at a distance. It removes us. And in the West, we practice that removal. And what this piece from Malidoma Patrice Somé is pointing to is that first we practice inclusion. First we practice pointing towards wholeness. Then we deal with the body. So think about that in contrast to what I said about Audre Lorde earlier. No one was inviting her to practice wholeness. They were inviting her to, please, I got my blinders on about the fact that you've had a mastectomy. So I need you to take care of me while you're walking around like that. That's not about wholeness. I want to share something really quickly about Rumi that I discovered recently. Um, Hopefully we have Rumi fans here. It was a wonderful uh, poet. Can't quote a time frame off the top of my head. Um, but Rumi's name, Rumi, R-U-M, actually equals Rome. So R-U-M-I is Rumi. The R-U-M is means designates Rome. So his very name says um, that he comes from the western half of what was Anatolia, which was formerly part of the Roman Empire. Um, so he he was living at a time in the midst of the Roman Crusades. So think about how all that is going on, and his culture is being attacked while his name says you're actually from that part that actually was Roman. So his name literally meant outsider. But he was a great unifier. He was a great unifier through his teachings and his poetry. So, in the midst of all this, the Roman Crusades and the sectarian conflicts and violence, he said, I go to the Muslim mosque and the Jewish synagogue and the Christian church, and I see one altar. I see one altar. So this is even a radical idea now. And he was saying this like in the 13th century. But even though people didn't necessarily get it, they didn't necessarily understand it, because he offered it with such gentleness that it was recognized as truth. And at his funeral, representatives from all faiths were present. So he was a great interconnector. It's not that interconnection hasn't, that it's not that we've only recently had to fight for interconnection. There's always been this struggle, and we've always needed great interconnectors, and we've needed people like us who are just willing to believe, to add that support. So in his poem, The Melting Snow, Rumi said, Lo, I am with you always, means when you look for God, God is in the look in your eyes, in the thought of your looking, nearer to yourself or things that have happened to you. There's no need to go outside. Be melting snow. Wash yourself of yourself. And this for me points back in certain ways to Malidoma Patrice Sommet and ritual, and being aware of what we are washing ourselves of and what we are washing ourselves in. So because my experience of the modern Western world is that ritual is largely relegated to religious spaces, and that ritual, when performed outside of, sanctioned religious spaces, can be considered sort of woo-woo, or, you know, maybe not legitimate or not connected. I think the truth is that whatever we do repeatedly becomes our ritual. We can't escape ritual. If I decide repeatedly that because, like Brene Brown, I'm feeling really lonely and alone, that I'm going to have chocolate cake, if that's what I always decide, that's my ritual, there's going to be consequences in my body, maybe in my teeth. That's my, if I'm doing it repeatedly and consistently, vigorously, kind of like a concentration element, that's my ritual. So one of the reasons that I practice with words, like the way I've shared so much in this gathering today, is because words are part of what Malidoma Patrice Sommet calls the machine. So for me, I need to practice consistently with words because I can, because I know how to do that, because it interests me to do that. Disability, if the definition of one definition of disability that I've offered is having a natural body that performs natural functions in accordance with its unique capacities. I actually need to practice with that. I need to practice that kind of disability. That needs to become my ritual, regardless of what anybody else thinks or what anyone else practices. And, if I don't have an amputation, for instance, like Audre Lorde, my disability causes me to be unable to walk very well, which is a motor function as opposed to a perceptual wholeness function. But if I am practicing getting to know my inherent condition of being entire and unbroken, then I embrace whatever my capacities to walk or not to walk are, to balance or not to balance are. To think, when I get overtired, I can't think. I can't read a book. There's things I can't do. I need to practice understanding my wholeness, even though there's no thinking or reading right now, for instance. And to practice with being in relationship of how the quality of that is my own healthy, sound, genuine wholeness. This is my wholeness. This is my wholeness. It's, no matter what anybody else wants to say, it's not my brokenness, it's my wholeness. So I do want to offer, at least a couple minutes for sharing before I give some closing words and the dedication of merit. So is there anything anyone would like to share? anyone have any um, thoughts about how ritual might appear in your lives? So Stephanie just shared in the chat. Um, this session has been really good for me. I feel like I learned so much and come away feeling grounded. Thank you. So thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you for the yeah, for the reference to melanoma. Yeah, it's one of my, yeah, one of the people I've been wanting to embrace in my practice. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for the deep dive and for sharing around ritual.
Yeah, and I just want to say this book is only about 100 pages long, so that's a
Oh,
great way to start.
yeah. Yeah, I know there's a few that he's written, but yeah,
Yeah.
short books are yeah, very attractive in my book.
Yes, I
Um,
want to be able to finish.
yes, exactly. Um, yeah, I mean, mm, yeah, I think for me, yeah, I haven't really thought of like meditation practice as ritual. Um, and I also have a sense that I need to kind of claim my practice is my practice because some, I've just signed up for this like meditation course and it's got like you have to write there's a Sangha attached to it, but yeah, you have to sort of submit um a field report, quote unquote. And I was feeling
Okay.
like, yeah, just I guess just like what's your experience of it's an on-demand course, which actually doesn't I know it doesn't fit with how I learn. You know,
Oh
I need sign guided like people talking to me, even if it's on on a Zoom. Like I need live people. Um, and it just felt so much like school.
no.
I had this like real aversion to it. Um, and so yeah, that was just an example of not feeling like the practice is mine, an extreme example. Um, and I often feel like that, like I'm not, it's like, well, am I really appropriating? So, like South Asian practice. It doesn't, yeah, it's just I've struggled to like really claim my practice for myself. And yeah, I just think thinking of practice as ritual for me, like just to have a felt sense of that. And also because it's, aligned with West African tradition. And that's my lineage. It just feels more like it feels like it could be a step to kind of claiming my spiritual practice as ritual for
Yeah.
myself. Mm. So yeah, I appreciate you yeah, bringing that in. And also, the idea of wholeness and that's radical. Like I mean, Audre Lorde was radical, and so I heard that piece before around her aesthetic and how she responded and
Yeah. I don't know if you can tell, but on the cover of the book, the Cancer
oh
Journals,
yes, I
she's
had that.
actually she's actually not wearing her she's not wearing a
Uh-huh.
prosthetic. It's not there. It's not there.
Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah. I mean it is, she's whatever she had that sense of like not that it was easy, but going against yeah, prescribed and kind of, patriarchal ideas of what women should look like and be like and all things. But yeah, I mean, even in this day, especially in this day and age, like to um, see ourselves as whole, those of us with disabilities, different, differently abled, it's still radical, like it, yeah.
Yes.
And I do like struggle with embracing um my own, limitations and seeing myself as whole, actually. So, yeah, I just appreciate the way you framed wholeness and, in terms of this Sangha and disability in general. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I don't think you were here when we were talking. Oh, it looks like Amanda had to leave. I'm just going to go ahead and stop the recording.
So, hope I didn't take up too much.